Alexandra Marshall, thank you very much, Alexandra. I believe the last time I spoke to you, it was it would have been the morning for you. I think it was overnight here, the day of the Queen's death. And, I mean, it's hard to think it's been that long ago. I mean, we've kind of barely spoken about anything else. But what's the sense at the minute like where you are in Australia?
Well, myself, like so many others down here in Australia, I've had to stop watching the footage of all these people processing past the Queen because I keep bursting into tears and then I look like a raccoon. So I've had to stop. I nearly went off again with that footage you showed beforehand. A lot of Australia is obviously watching all the events unfold in the UK. A lot of broadcasters, particularly American broadcasters, have forgotten that she was our Queen as much as she was anybody else's, and that was the beauty of Her Majesty. She treated all the realms and all the citizens of the Commonwealth exactly the same. She was a great unifying force, and we all feel her loss quite keenly. And if anything, as the days have gone by since her death was announced, the shock has worn off, and the terrible loss that's there in the gap of leadership in the world is being felt more keenly by people, particularly when her coffin was travelling through Scotland, now throwing flowers on the road. That is when it really started to hit home to a lot of people watching at home.
Absolutely, and you mentioned a really important phrase there, which is that she was a world leader, a figurehead of the world. That's why every other country, and anyone who tells you differently is lying, every single other country in the world wished that they had our Queen, because she was the world's monarch, essentially. Some would even go as far as to say, in a sense, maybe the world's grandmother. And she leaves behind a massive void. Alexandra, and I don't want to over-dramatise this too much, but we do live in scary times. I am quite scared of the potentially destabilising effect that the Queen's death may have globally.
Well, there are a couple of things there. The first is that monarchy seems to be an institution that is so deeply rooted in human history, not just English history, but human history in general, that without a sovereign who is more or less without power, but is there as a spiritual leader for the world, really, and for the people, we see republics and the presidents at the heads of republics being almost deified in a dangerous way. I mean, you look at America and their families of presidents are turning into essentially old school monarchies where they've got power and prestige, whereas the Queen stood for the absolute best solution of power in a symbolic sense, but only to hand it back to the people. It's such an important midway point. And without her in the world, you're right, there is definitely a void of power sitting above the world's presidents and prime ministers who are all looking up to her guidance. I mean, she solved a lot of political crises just by talking to these people. And without her with her gone, the wealth of knowledge that she had and the, almost century worth of political knowledge has been lost. And I think we will feel that across the world's leaders for a while as they try and find their feet.